Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. And we are live streaming from Stream. This is on Restream. So hopefully I am doing the right thing. And hopefully you'll be patient with me as I stream on this new platform. Today we're going to be a rather interesting topic is the United States under attack? Last night at the White House meeting or dinner, we saw where the president was under attack, right? Well, the White, not perhaps President Trump, but the journalist president was there and his wife and some other important guests right there at the White House where there was a shootout. Now, there are moments when headlines break that instantly trigger fear, speculation, but the real question is not what we are being told first, it's what actually happened and why the arms so quickly. This afternoon, we're breaking down the claims, the context, and the bigger picture behind the reports coming out of the United States. I want to slide, more descriptive version drops about security resort United States being under attack. The reaction immediate, the misinformation. And this afternoon, we separate what is confirmed from what is being assumed. Really say about the current political in the United States. Now, Mr. Mr. Fred Corbin, as soon as he gets here, I hope that I'll be able to recognize him in the stream. So please let me know when you're here. Hopefully I'll be able to see you and get you right here on the platform. While I'm waiting for Mr. Corbin, let me see here if there's any guest here in line to make sure that I'm not here and I'm not. Okay, so let's look at this article that I saw this morning because, we have this sort of understanding that in the United States, people were suggesting that Mossad be behind it. There are many theories who controls. There was an article here that was written by Ahmed Horowitz, and he wrote a very interesting article here, which I shall be sharing some of the key points that he article. Trump's war, thinking Israel controls U.S. imperialism would be a mistake. So in times of horrific violence and illegal war, the kind we're seeing now with the United States officially entering the war against Iran, it's understandable that people search missions. They want to know why the bombs keep falling, why it's charged, and why most powerful enables it all. In that search, the people active but deeply dangerous answer. Israel controls the United States. Let's be unequivocal. It's not just false. It's rooted in centuries-old anti-Semitic conspiracy theories, and it distorts of how imperialism, capitalism, foreign policy actually function. The United States is the most powerful world. Its military budget dwarfs that by many times. Its corporations dominate global finance and media, maintains hundreds of military bases around, wields veto power in the United Nations security. It can unilaterally impose economic tyranny through sanctions as it has done. To suggest that such a country is being controlled far smaller state like Israel isn't just illogical, it's a deflection from the real drivers of global ending war. The US supports Israel not because it's under Israel's control, but because doing so has imperial interests in the Middle East. The region holds immense strategic value, primarily for its oil and natural, as well as key maritime trade routes. Since the end of World War II, the US has relied on a network of client states, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, and most crucially Israel, hegemony over the vital Israel of the unsinkable aircraft carrier, to borrow a term once used by US generals, and serves as a military outpost that also happens to be a settler colonial project. In other words, Israel is a tool of imperialism, not its master. Blaming for US crimes abroad has always been dodged, especially when the real culprit is much closer to home. US support for Israel is not driven by ethnic or religious loyalty, driven by the logic of capitalism. The Wall Street investors and fossil giants handsomely from a permanent state of instability in the region. Israel is one of the top importers of US stock military and partners. The US sends to Israel, much of it is recycled back into the coffers of US weapons manufacturers Martin and Raytheon. The wars are profitable, the devastation is good for business. Frame the puppeteer obscures the reality. It material system of profit and domination into a shadow, and history shows us where the road leads. The myth of Jewish control is as old as European anti-Semitism itself. In the Jews were accused of controlling finance, poisoning wells, and monarchs. In the 20th century, Hitler's Nazi power on claims that Jews secretly dominated governments, banks, and media. The infamous forgery, the Protocol, became a bestseller. And during the Cold War, both the far right and sectors of the trafficked in conspiracy theories about secretive Zionist influence over the West. And he goes on to suggest that Israel is not at the heart of what we're seeing in the United States, because that is a thing now that is behind many of what we're seeing in the Middle East. Hopefully Mr. Corbyn will be joining us soon. I did also publish a video yesterday in which I saw that Trump was actually saying that he was going to unalive all of the Iranian leaders, the ones who actually disagreed with him in terms of inking out a deal, that he was going to bomb them, he was going to bomb the country, and he was going to unalive them. And I thought that that was an injudicious comment from any prime minister or any sitting president for him to have said. And we saw what happened last night. I'm not suggesting that linked or connected, but it could be. We don't know. But for him to have bold-facedly said that he was going to kill all these Iranians, the ones who don't agree with him, he said, that was something, not a wise comment to have made, to say the least. So what we're seeing in the world, as it were, the war is on because, as we are seeing, Trump, in his way, and the United States wants to control a region of the Middle East, and as a result of that, they are doing everything on their belt, right, and within their power. The war is not a foregone war, right? It's not something that ends. I'm looking at Corbyn. Normally he would be here. Let me see if I don't see hint of him here being in the studios. First, I'm using this platform, so I see him here. So we'll continue until Mr. Corbyn gets here. Yeah, we'll continue. So that is what is happening. But let's look at let's continue to look at some of what the insider with us. This is not a question of the U.S. or the U.S. controlling Israel. It is about capitalism's never-ending thirst for resources, the U.S. desire to maintain its imperialist hegemony, and its to maintain its position. It's about a shared structure of racialized violence and disposition. Iranians aren't being bombed by U.S.-made military equipment because being manipulated, nor are their weapons or those weapons used to thousands because Jews control the U.S. government, are suffering because U.S.-led imperialism and the capitalist system is doing what it has always done: since Israel existed, using war and violence to enrich corporations and billionaires. So this is nothing we're seeing happening in the United States. This is what it does. To prop up wars, wars are, we know that. It is not something that they want to end the war. And my thing is that when I saw one night, I know that Trump is very, very also shrewd. We can estimate how shrewd he is. We saw before that there was an attack on him, right? And he was spared from that attack. And people afterwards that his, rate, because people were suggesting that God saved him for a particular purpose. Seeing the very same comments being made now after last night's attack, saying that God set up Trump for a specific mission might earn him some points. So while we're seeing what happened last night, this could be a staged event. We don't know. I think now that it is staged, or it was staged, but it seems from all indications that it is not right. How would a single man, going to the White House, people say all of that stuff. Well, he is a person, I think he's a tutor, and all the way from California, I think from Southern California. And he went to the White House, and for somehow he started now. Do you think that they would have permitted him? What basis was he there at the White House? And would they have allowed him to just be shooting up the White House like that with all of the surveillance and the security that we house? Now, these are very important questions that we have to ask, right? And this is something that we need to look into. Now, the writer here continues, we dismantle the system that links Tel Aviv to Washington, Raytheon to the rubble of Tehran, and can only be treating the symptom rather than the disease. And that is the whole thing, that we have the simplistic understanding of power, the centers of power, and then we are treating the symptom rather than the disease. Who controls Trump? Ask. Who controls him? Who controls the presidents of the United States? Do they really have the power that they claim? And are there forces that will go up against? They're not doing what they are tasked with doing or what they're instructed to do. We know that Trump is an exceptionally, what should I say now, controversial character. And he likes to have his way, right? Trump likes to have his way. He was a CEO. So he doesn't understand that the United States government, that he ran his company. So in some cases, hard-headed. What if to say we don't know what is happening behind the scenes? What if they instructed him, the powers that be instructed him that he did not want to do? And then they are just sending him a clear message that you are not in charge. We are, right? These are some of the questions that we have to ask ourselves. From what we're gathering, it seems to me, and some people are asking the question on social media, I don't know how many of J.D. Vance responded very, very, quickly, and the Secret Service seemed to have wanted to take him out. Now, I don't know if that is something we can, hook on to in terms of there might be that they wanted the president and Vance to take over the presidency. We don't know. But these are some questions we also need to ask, right, in terms of who they went for first and who they wanted to protect in stages of when they understood that they were under attack. All right, these are very important questions. And Corbyn, I wonder if he's having some problems. I don't have my phone here to see, but yeah, what do you think of what do you saw that situation last night? Let me see if I can get some comments from Corbyn. Yeah, are you seeing me? Can you put your comments, or you can answer comments? Can you? Could you say good afternoon? Let me see if I see where. Let me say good afternoon. So I'm making free stream today. This is my first time this platform, so I'm not even sure if the guest, Mr. Corbyn, should be. I'm not sure if he's here, whether or not he's here. Good afternoon. Can you see my comment? Can you see my comment? Please, yeah, please, somebody say hi to me and let me see if I can see your comment. I don't know if I'm see your comment if I'm. This is under the comment section. Can you tell me? Can you or a message, public message, and see if I'm on the live? Are you hearing me, everyone? Can you hear me? Hope, can you hear me? Am I being heard? Hello? Yeah, can you hear me? Let me see if I'm on the right line. Yeah, but it should be here. Um, yeah, I'm not seeing anybody. Can you hear me? Okay, good. Can you hear me? Yeah, very good. Can you hear me? No? Yeah, I'm not when I put up your comment, see the comment on the stream? Yeah, this is sort of strange. Can you hear me? Can you hear me well? Yeah, okay. All right, let's continue. Oh, it's a little delay. It's a little delay. Okay, all right. I don't this is my stream. Yeah, the stream platform. It might not be as StreamYard does. Yeah, so please bear with me. I'm wondering if Mr. Corbin is here. I'm not seeing him on in the backstage. I'm not seeing any stage here. Let me check. Give me 1 second to if he's here. Let me see. Not working? Wow. Not working. So let me see if I can back the stream is not working. It's working. Can you check it again? It's not working, but it's working for me. I don't know why it's not working. I did send him the yeah, I did. Sorry guys, I'm trying to get Mr. Corbin in, but it seems that it is not, says him. It is actually working for me. Let me see. Yeah, it's restream. Let's continue. Let's continue. If Mr. Corbin can't make it today, then we understand why. Because I'm not able to. I did send him the code to enter, but perhaps it is not. He did not get it. I don't know. Yeah, this is so. Please be patient with me in terms of trying to get everybody situated and adjusted. Now let's look at a news item today about what happened, because we also in terms of what happened last night at the White House. It took us off guard, expecting that the president would have been in that situation, the White House in general. So we have here the US today says Trump likely targeted in dinner shooting, live updates. So you're saying now this is now coming from the US today. So this is not something that is conspiracy theory. They're literally saying that have been attacked. Do they? Let me see if the. What is he saying here? All right, I would not be able to go. Let me send back it to you, Mr. Corbin. Let me see if I can back to you the invite guests. Invite guests, and this is the. Oh, it's right here. Yeah, I'm sending. Yeah, let me send him back the thing here, the stream. Yeah, this is. So we have here H. Second, guys, I'm trying to send Mr. Corbin the stream code so that he can get in. Like, this is as friendly as. So we have studio and we have restream, and we have .io, and slash ERT, and we have a dot UGC, and it's dash DAD. Yeah. Can you go now on it, Mr. Corbin? I just sent you the code. Hopefully you will be able to get with this, because this is a link. We're trying to get Mr. Corbin in, ladies and gentlemen. Sorry about that. This is stream. We're on Restream, and that is why it is taking some time for him to connect. Stream. So give me a second. Just give me a second. I'll be with you. Mr. Corbin will be with us shortly. Hopefully, this time it works. We were saying that U.S. Today. Let me just see if he's in the studios here, and now that acting attorney General Todd Blanche on Sunday said the gunman who opened fire at the White House Correspondents Association dinner appears to have targeted President Donald Trump and officials. It does not appear that he did, in fact, set out to target folks that work in the administration. Likely, Blanche said in the interview on NBC News, Meet the Press, adding that the authorities are still investigating the suspect's motive. Though we must say that they did not kill the person. Did they kill him? Oh, he's here now. Let me add him to the stream. Good. Mr. Corbin is wow. That was good afternoon, Mr. Corbin.
Yeah, the first link you sent wasn't working. This one worked perfectly.
What? Yeah, maybe because I went to bed late last night. When I sent you the link, it was not necessarily doing well. Okay, so Mr. Corbin, let's hear on. What were your impressions when you saw what took place at the White House last night?
Well, let us.
Hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you perfectly. Let's look very carefully at the history of what has gone on with Donald Trump in the last year or more. Just prior to Donald Trump's election, we had two such incidents, one in Butler in the USA and then one in Florida when he was playing golf. Both were almost identical circumstances where somebody managed to sneak into the area or into the immediate environs without being detected, armed and ready to carry out the so-called assassination. This incident at the White House is no different. In addition to that, within minutes of the incident happening, there was a telltale media release that just proved that it was all a setup, where all of a sudden they had a complete documentary and an essay of information on the individual, where he went to school, how many guns he bought in the last 6 months, this, that, and the other. Classic Mossad fingerprints on everything. Not only that, in recent footage of the suspect has come to light with him wearing an Israel Defense Forces blazer. And you only get that if you have been trained by the IDF. How do I know this? Been there, understand the situation, okay? The most important thing that we have to understand here, this is a desperate attempt by the US administration to bring America into line with regard to Donald Trump's policy against Iran. Not only that, but it has backfired majestically in the opposite direction, simply because people now know that not only is Mossad completely in charge of everything that goes on around the president, but has the capability of inserting operatives outside of the security screen of the Secret Service. And this is what is most concerning.
Mm.
The security at that location was an
Mhm.
absolute nightmare. Okay? Multiple entrances, multiple exits, everything has to be covered, everything has to be vetted. It's never easy doing a commercial hotel. Okay? There are too many avenues to be exploited. But
Mhm.
where the hotel is located is easy for someone with the correct level of training, even rudimentary training, to be able to get into the premises. And that's precisely what happened.
Mhm.
The security was a joke,
Mhm.
absolute joke.
Yes.
I have never seen such lackadaisical attempts, and even the response after the shooting was absolute stupidity, in my honest opinion, because everybody was sitting around and nothing
Mhm.
had ever happened, and so on. And then all of a sudden, there was a last-minute flurry of excitement and trying to rush people off stage. Look,
I saw that.
look, Secret Service security, if done properly, that guy would not even have gotten past the corner of the opposite street. Okay? This is nothing more than a Mossad attempt to carry out the exact same level of incident that they did in Butler and the one that they did in Florida. That's all it is. And all it is
Yes.
to sway
Yes.
the public opinion to support Donald Trump or to whip up public outrage against Iran. And then they'll try to blame this person and that person. And immediately in Trump's press conference within hours, the first question that came out of the media pool, which he said before the event he was going to eviscerate with questions, was, is this linked to Iran?
Yes.
That person was placed there to ask the question. I mean, and look, it's not
Right.
rocket science, okay? This is amateur hour here. Amateur hour, all
Yeah.
right? It's nothing
Yeah.
more than a
Yeah.
stage, and the actors are doing exactly the same script as they did a year ago, and it's the same level of nonsense. However, the fingerprints remain the same. Israel State Intelligence Service via Mossad. That's it. There's no other
Yes.
explanation needed.
Now, when it's happening, what role does the United States itself has, though? Because we know that they are also accustomed to launching false flag events. We know what happened with the United States also during the Bay of Pigs wanted to, blow up sections of the United States and blame it on Cuba. So the same thing we're seeing now, the American public is not the United Trump is doing in Iran. They don't think it's a justifiable war. He's trying to push, as you said, that war. And in order to do that, he's going to say now, that Iran, is a threat of some United States want to kill him, the president himself. Now, do you think, Mr. Corbyn, I was reading from the Washington Post also this morning, that Trump decided at the last minute to fire a top scientist, I don't know if you read, United States. Could it also be that is happening behind the scenes and they're not so much happy with Donald Trump, as bad as he is, and perhaps want to?
Well, there's a lot of validity to the statement about Mossad and Israel wanting to get rid of Donald Trump. Okay, there's no question about that in my mind. And the view of my intelligence colleagues in the intelligence community is the same, where in recent days, Donald Trump has categorically made a U-turn with regard to the commitment of a planned ground invasion of Iran. He does not want to do it anymore.
Mhm.
Somebody has gotten through to him and tell him, listen, you are not only going to cause the deaths of well over 50,000 American servicemen, but you're going to find yourself in a situation where you will be out of office before your term is even up, and before the
Mhm.
the midterm elections. You could be just run out of office entirely. The American public will demand your
Yes.
immediate resignation if you do this, and that has pissed off Bibi Netanyahu. Okay, hence this false flag event. Now, this could be a very clear message sent by Mossad to the president. You're next if you don't comply. And I have absolutely no doubt in my mind that we are looking at the potential for a presidential assassination if he does not go through with the ground invasion in Iran. And these sentiments are echoed by the Iranian foreign minister, Mr. Arachi, who said to
Mhm.
the
Mhm.
to the media in Islamabad, the President of the United States of America is beholden to the demands of the Israel regime. And at the end of the day, everything that we have seen, the lead up, the build up during the ceasefire, the massive build up ongoing into Israel, into the region by US forces and so on, is leading toward a ground invasion. Just in the last 24 hours alone, we've had over 40 transport aircraft land at the Ben Gurion airport in Israel, offloading weapons, arms, ammunition, and equipment. Why? Because they believe that there's an opportunity for Israel to renew the attacks not only on Iran, but also to be able to take southern Lebanon and hold it. Well, that's not going to happen because Iran has already issued a statement that they will attack any aggressive action following any expiration of the ceasefire. And if Israel does go ahead with continued attacks in Lebanon, Iran will step in. And you know what that means? Hypersonic missiles coming in like rain. Israel has never had an answer for this.
Yes. Now, I heard Trump suggesting day before yesterday that those Iranians who don't agree with him, he's going to unalive them. The key word he used. Now, do you think that also could have been an injudicious statement of his on his part and could have led also to what?
Well, the thing is that what took place in the United States of America last night basically has nothing to do with his injudicious statements, because he has made injudicious statements ever since he came to public knowledge. At the end of the day, even when he was running the TV show The Apprentice, he was continually making injudicious statements. So injudicious statements is part of this man's character. You have to understand that he has an educational background that has been run by a Zionist billionaire, and everything that he was taught by this individual is now coming to the fore, where he takes responsibility for nothing, says what he wants, backs up what he says by even more rhetoric, and can never verify a complete standpoint upon which verifiable action or foreign policy can be made. What we do have here is that we have a significant instability in US foreign policy that is now affecting not only the way that America is being viewed by the rest of the world, but is having disastrous results with regard to America's standing in the world as any form of authoritarian or authority in the global arena. And Donald Trump is making it worse by exacerbating the situation when personally saying statements that he's going to kill leaders of this person or this country or that country and so on. All you do when that happens is that you harden the resolve of a nation like Iran to strike first.
Right. I thought when I heard him say that, but it could also be both sides, that he's also setting up and saying the whole thing was staged, as we're saying it was staged. So that was like a precursor to say that, oh yes, I did say that, and look at what has happened. So we have to get rid of these people because they're dangerous. So Trump, but he's not that stupid. We know that he's street smart and he has probably more sense. Another thing I'm thinking, Mr. Fact, that Trump does not necessarily like physical combat. He is a person who just wants to do something with Maduro, which is not going to happen in Iran. And that is what he probably thought he could have done. But he doesn't have the discipline.
Well, Donald Trump has never had discipline.
Let me turn off something else. Let me turn off this on here.
Well, your camera is just a little blurry.
Yeah. What is going on? Okay. Yeah, it's my end. Yeah, let me take this off. Did you hear my question?
Yeah, I heard your question. Yeah, I can hear your question. Donald Trump has never been. Donald Trump has never been in a situation where he's never been in combat. He's never been in a situation where there's been any physical violence against his person. And at the end of the day, the situation with regard to how he views the world is very insular. He has a very narrow view of what the reality is on the ground. And there is a reason why that is, because he's not influenced by people who understand the independent thought behind a tactical or a strategic situation. Okay? If you had real strategic thinking individuals and you had tactically thinking individuals who were collaborating together to bring about a serious plan on how to affect a military outcome in Iran, which is virtually impossible, we wouldn't be having this conversation. And Donald Trump would be looking for ways to negotiate with the global community in order to be able in order to bring about a resolution to the crisis. He is not interested in resolution unless it is 100% based on his insular thinking on what the terms of reference and terms and conditions should be. You're not talking about somebody who understands negotiation. Donald Trump is not a negotiator. He is a deal maker based upon what he believes to be the facts. And anybody who whispers in his ear that he likes what they're saying, that usually gets a decision swayed in that direction. Donald Trump is not a negotiator. He does not understand foreign policy. He has never read a single publication on geopolitics. He does not understand statesmanship, and he does not have any interest in pursuing statesmanship based upon international law. If we had that combination, we would have probably one of the greatest statesmen in United States presidential history. But we don't. We're looking at a child mind in an 80-year-old body who is fixated on one thing only, and that is ridiculous, egotistical nonsense that takes center stage from the minute he opens his eyes in the morning until the time he goes to sleep at night. Okay? And at the end of the day, you cannot have results.
But can we blame him though? Because I've been seeing in the United States for a very long time. It was not perhaps in your face. It was the United States, as all of what you've said it really is what the United States essentially is. People there don't kill, and what they think, their cultures, as somebody was asked of that. Was it J.D. Vance or wasn't J.D. Vance? Could have been it could have been the defense minister. How many people live in Iran, and I mean, he was a top official there in the administration, one of the ones. So the United States has that sort of disposition that they own the world and that they are police, do whatever they want to do. Donald Trump is just the one who comes out more raw in that sense. It's a raw U.S. culture, which is raw. And that is how even ordinary citizens behave to a great extent. The United States can do whatever it wants to do because the empire of the world. So do you think the symptom of the problem rather than attacking and I don't think Israel is the root of the problem. I think that it is the U.S. military industrial that is at the root of the problem. Israel is one of the contributors to what we're seeing right now, but certainly not the disease. It's symptom of the disease.
But you just answered your own question.
How did I answer it?
You answered your own question by saying the military-industrial complex. Well, who owns the military-industrial complex? The entire Zionist cabal. And who owns Israel? The Zionist cabal. So you answered your own question. It is Israel. It is the Zionists, and they're completely controlled from top to bottom. The Zionists control America. If you watch the documentary called Occupied by Stu Peters, you will understand the level of indoctrination and the level of occupation that has happened in the United States of America since 1871. The new Constitution of America in 1871, which did away with the 1776 Constitution, in which Washington, D.C. was turned into a corporatocracy, that is the advent and the taking over of the United States of America by the Zionist cabal. In 1901, when the Federal Reserve was formed, that was when they seized control of the financial system. And then Richard Nixon was then coerced into getting off of the gold standard so that the Federal Reserve could then continue to rape and pillage the world on weaponized United States dollar and debt. So the Zionists have always been in control of America since 1871. And the Zionists are who utilize Lord Rothschild on behalf of the royal family and then Lord Balfour signing the Balfour Declaration, which was initiating the formation of the state of Israel. So yes, Israel controls everything. To say that Israel
Well,
doesn't
that's one
control
theory.
anything is just not the actual government within Israel may not control the United States of America, but the handlers of that state, which are the Zionist cabal and the Zionist billionaires in the United States of America, who are far removed from the reality on the ground, are controlling precisely what happens on that sandbox gulag that people call the state of Israel. Okay, and they control
Yeah,
America.
yeah. That's one theory, because if we look at it from that handle, from that perspective, rather, you control the world from day one, and because in conspiracy theory, that is Israel was a problem, as we saw in Spain, in just all of Europe, is the Jews were the problem, right? And now we see in America they're saying it's the Jews. When you read history, you found out that it was not the Jews. Behind the Jews, more powerful people like the Vatican, behind what was happening and steering the ship. But the Vatican has used them as the enemy as they point away from what the scenes.
Yes,
So that is one, and I respect to have that is, but I think it's simplistic, because to say that Israel was always the problem since time immemorial, and I don't think that is. The Roman Empire still dominates. Empire has always hated the Jews. We know that. We know that's why they launched that thing in Nazi Germany and in Spain, and they have ever been that they are under the control of. But they can be used as a tool. Look, when Christ was, we know that the Jews, they were used as a tool to kill him. Not that the Roman Empire loved them. They did it because they had a common price. So what we're looking at now, the Vatican is an enemy of the United States too, is suggesting are enemies of the United States. But the Vatican can't say that because he wants to be maintained as the moral leader, while Israel and the United States are the road guys. And this is what we're saying, and I understand that this is really what is happening behind the scenes. It's not that Israel controls the U.S., because there are lobbies there, as you know, Mr. Corbyn. Saudi Arabia lobby group. You have so many different lobby groups in the United States, the U.S. military industrial complex, which control what is happening. But I think to say the Jews are the only ones would be a little bit too simplistic.
well, I've never mentioned the Jews controlling anything because they don't. At the end of the
The
day,
Zionists, or to say
the
just the
Zionists.
Zionists.
Yeah, but hang on a second.
Yeah.
Let's stop right there. Let's stop right there. The Zionist ideology is completely different from the Jewish faith. Let's draw that distinction right there.
Correct.
The Jewish faith is the Jewish faith. The Zionist ideology is completely and totally different. What the Zionists have done, because they are in the more powerful but in the minority, is that they have allied themselves with the Jewish faith in order to be able to command the situation in their favor. This is what people miss. People think that it's Jews, Jews, Jews. Listen, I have many, many Jewish friends who are upstanding, righteously minded individuals, some of the best people you could ever meet. And they are absolutely in abhorrence of the entire process of what is happening around the world and how the Jewish faith has been completely destroyed and being dismantled by what the Zionist ideology are preaching. The Jews are not Zionists. Zionism.
Some are.
Zionists,
Some are. But
some are. You can see, and a classic example of that is this U.S. to Israel ambassador, Mike Huckabee, who sits down in an interview with his little black soup bowl on his head, okay, and professes to the world that he's a Christian Zionist. That's an oxymoron, because you can't be a Christian and a Zionist at the same time, because the two are diametrically opposed. Okay,
opposed.
But again, the whole deception that Zionist uses against the world is that the Jews are being attacked. We're trying to kill Jews. We're trying to do Judaism. It has absolutely nothing to do with Jews or Judaism. It is Zionist, Ashkenazi, Chabad infiltrators that come from the Khazarian mafia all the way back to the biblical tribe of Amalek. And if you want proof of this,
Yes.
you engage a Zionist in conversation, and you mention the word Amalek. And if he has a weapon on him, you'll be shot dead. It has
Right. But
a massive negative response. If you
correct.
mention the word Amalek to a Zionist, they fly into a rage because you have now touched exactly where they have come from. The biblical
Right.
tribe of Amalek. Okay, that is where they come from.
Right.
The Jewish faith and the Jewish idea and the Jewish religion only came into being 400 years after or before the death of Christ. BC, 400 BC.
Mm-hmm.
The Zionist ideology comes from the Khazarian mafia. Long before that, the Jewish religion is only 400 years before the death of Christ.
Mm-hmm.
And they were in a very, very small minority in Mesopotamia, right up until the time of the Roman Empire. Okay,
but they wielded influence. So the people they wielded some influence,
yes,
and
they did, because
in the so-called empire.
They understood the Roman Empire and its workings and so on. But at the end of the day, Jews have nothing to do with Zionism. The Zionist ideology that we see being played out in the world today, that has caused chaos since taking over of the United States of America, has nothing to do with the Jewish faith. And if you want professional confirmation of this, just have a conversation with Professor Jeffrey Sachs. He's a Jew, and he tells you exactly the same thing.
Well, he's also a Vatican chill too, so I understand Professor Jeffrey Sachs, and that he's a Vatican chill. He went away secretively. So a lot of what he says and whatever may be true, some of what he's saying in the political system, but he's hiding a system he knows is responsible for what is happening in the world. So I know very well and what he actually dispenses. Though that is the same thing when we look at white supremacy. People have this sort of philosophy that all white people are racist, and they don't understand that white people don't represent that system of power. You at the top who do, and they dispense that sort to the populace, which sometimes are indoctrinated, just like you're saying Zionism. Some Jews might also be indoctrinated by Zionism. Of the matter, white people, the ordinary white man in America does not control anything in terms of what is happening in the world. But people see the white man or the white woman as the center of power because most of the people in power are ones who look like him, or her. So this is the whole thing I'm saying, that sometimes we look at that as black people, sometimes we simplistically look at it, it's the white man, every white man, and that is not the case. And the same thing is happening with the Jews, saying it's Zionism that the problem, and the few at the top who are actually carrying out that sort of agenda, and must have called them papal Jews. Papal Zionism came from the Jesuits themselves. So the fact of the matter is that we have to be careful in terms of who really are, how do the system of powers, how do they come behind the scenes, but showing us that these are our enemies when they are not our enemies. The white and Jew, as you're suggesting, are not our enemies. But guess what? When it comes down, when the rubber hits the road, these are the ones that we're going to be looking for the Jews and kill them. Saying that we have to be careful how we discuss, just as black people sometimes see all white people essentially as the enemy when they're not, just a few at the top are, then we have a problem. What would
I agree with you. I agree with the principles of precisely what you're saying, because we have everyone in the Caribbean, whether white or black, has come from an ancestry of prisoners of war, which has equalized our footing in our existence. Just because some white people chose to follow the colonial or the British colonial imperial methodology and still adopt that mindset today, doesn't make them any different than the people that were here before them. And the most important thing that we have to understand across the Caribbean region is that British colonial imperial power utilized the overall authority in which they wielded through force to selectively establish certain communities where white people were preferred because they looked like them, and that the prisoners of war who came across the Atlantic and so on were denigrated to a lesser existence.
Yeah.
My family is a classic example of that. My family came from Ireland, the ethnic cleansing of
Right.
Ireland. If you read the book To
Right.
Hell or Barbados, which details the ethnic cleansing of Ireland by Oliver Cromwell, my family comes from Ireland. My first ancestor arrived in Barbados in 1685 as a prisoner of war from Ireland. And what a lot of people don't recognize, that we had 10 to 1 of white prisoners of war coming from Ireland and Europe compared to black prisoners of war coming from Africa. 10 to 1. 10 white people for every one black person. But the white people didn't survive very long because in the tropics, they couldn't survive the diseases, they couldn't survive the weather, and so on. Whereas the Africans fell straight into the situation because that's where they came from, West Africa. Okay, along the same latitude. Latitude of West Africa and the Caribbean are along the same latitude. So you have no problem. West Africans have no problem existing and thriving in the Caribbean region. And our storied and excellence of our ancestry has come full circle, come to the point today where we have a very robust Caribbean longevity accolade, where Caribbean people are some of the healthiest, strongest communities on earth. Why? Because they come from strong, powerful African tribal ancestry, whereas white people don't. We come from very weak ancestral hierarchies and so on, with very weak physical constitutions. Okay? And at the end of the day, our perception of what has gone on in the Caribbean region and how it is influenced by international relations needs to be seriously reviewed as a subject of public knowledge in order to be able to correct some of the negative nuances that have led to serious disconnection of our societies. That's just my opinion.
Yes. Yes. The dinner was. Let's look at some of the comments here. The dinner was held at the Washington Hilton. You're correct, not at the White House. Even Simone Saunders was able to ride up to the scooter. The person saying that, which is weird, right? That she was able to ride up to the White House, but to the entrance with her scooter. The perp was at the hotel in April.
That's
Do you know what he's saying? That the perp.
that's American term for the perpetrator.
Oh, okay, I got you. Last year, they tested Iran's response, and Iran didn't show its true strength. Iran hit back hard. Iran used hypersonic weapons that defeated the U.S. and Israeli defense system. How would you respond to that?
Well, evidence is clear. You can go and watch it
Yes.
happening live on Telegram. You can watch it happening live on YouTube. If you subscribe to Telegram, there are a large number of Telegram channels that documented the Iranian response on Israel, and there are several videos that can be viewed on any one of those sites that document the incoming Iranian hypersonic weapons and the speed in which they take targets out, and the very lackluster response by the Israel defense weaponry. And right now, that's what Israel is doing. Israel is rearming with whatever it can get its hands on to try to stave off the next wave of destruction that is incoming. And I'm guaranteeing you that if Trump doesn't take the off ramp that is sitting right in front of him right now, Israel is going to be wiped off the face of the map. That I can guarantee you, because Iran is not going to hold anything back. Not only that, this so-called tenuous ceasefire and then the extension by 3 weeks, which Israel has no intention of abiding by, and its ongoing assault against southern Lebanon, has allowed Iran to carry on its manufacturing of its missile stocks. Now, during the 39 days of the war, from the 28th of February to the day that the ceasefire was announced, Iran went through 8,461 missiles. 8,461 missiles. That represented just 10% of its stocks. 10%. Put that into perspective. 10%. Okay? So when you have that level of arms at your disposal, distributed across well over 100 underground cities that are not only self-sufficient in manufacturing and the connectivity underground by rail and by road, you have a network of resistance that you will not be able to break. And I don't care if Netanyahu decides to wake up one morning and use all 300 of Israel's nuclear weapons against Iran. It will not change the geopolitical situation because nuclear weapons do not eradicate geography. All they do is kill
Yes.
civilians. Okay? It does not eradicate geography. In addition to that, any ground invasion by any force whatsoever has historically failed in Iran. You can go back as far as Alexander the Great and see how he failed to get into the inner hinterlands in the inner deserts of Iran. Why? Because Iran is a natural fortress. You have the Alborz Mountains to the east and the north, and you also have the Zagreb Mountains that border the entire Persian Gulf, down to the Magad Mountains in the south, and then you have the western Himalayas on the Pakistan border. You cannot take Iran. It has never been conquered. There are two countries in the Middle East that have never been completely taken by any military forces. They may have been occupied for a short period of time, but they have never been conquered. One is Iran, the second one is Afghanistan. Okay? You cannot conquer these countries. These countries cannot be conquered. You can blow everything that's above ground off the map. You can turn it into a glass parking lot. What does that do? All it does is that it reinforces the fact that Iran was right and correct in preparing for the last 40 years by building an underground city complex that can keep the country running indefinitely.
Current warfare that we're seeing around the world now, not just in Iran, but around the world, including in Venezuela, is not just that we know it to be the traditional, which they do, and they're going to do that to have us is real, but it's more fighting ideological, going to win this ideological. It's not just many of our citizens. That's what they tune in television to see, how many hypersonic missiles are struck and whatever. They don't understand. At the end of the day, that is not what matters to these global elites, because they don't care if people die. That's what we have to understand. But what they care about, their ideology, is that which reigns supreme.
Well, what we're experiencing in the world today is fifth generation warfare, which is not only the marrying of asymmetric warfare by certain countries such as Iran, but also the information war. And the information war is far more powerful. Correct. By being able to sway public opinion, as well as to influence information and leverage information in order to be able for the systems of warfare to competently perform in the best defense or offense as required. The information war is actually far more of importance than at any other time than today, because as Dr. James Giordano from the U.S. Institute of Neurological Development and Weapons and so on, the mind and the brain is the battlefield of the 21st century. And if you can go to Google and type in Dr. James Giordano, and you can look at all of his videos where he outlines how powerful mind control weapons are, as well as nanoscale technology, which we've seen in the COVID-19 biological weapon injections that have influenced populations to do things they would not normally do. And you asked earlier, why is President Trump behaving the way that he is? Well, President Trump is a recipient of mind control operation via the Zionists. We know that for certain, okay? Because no normal, rational human being looking at the difference between Donald Trump before he was president and looking at him now can say that it's the same person. That is mind control at the height of it. Not only that, the potential always exists for an actor to take his place. Just like how it was with Joe Biden. Joe Biden had more than one actor that would act at one point or another, when really and truly he was incapacitated and couldn't perform. So they brought in an actor, put a mask on him, and put him out there and filled his head with nonsense. This is the reality. The mental and the mind warfare is truly the
Hmm.
battlefield of the 21st century. And our
Yes.
information warfare that is going on every single day is where we are. Lots of people ask me, well, why do you continue to put out information and back it up with documentation? Because that's the only way you're going to get truth, knowledge, and education to someone who is completely brainwashed into believing everything they see.
Right. Right. And that is what leads us into, or what we're seeing now happening is what really is happening, because we don't know. We don't know. We can only see what they divulge to us. But is that the real truth behind what we're seeing? The war between and the United States, is that really what? It's a one winning and the other losing. And this is the sort of information warfare that is right before us. And are we winning, or are we being conditioned by what we
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And that last night's incident at the Washington Hilton was a classic example of that. That was information
Yes.
warfare. Here is we're going to stage an
Yes.
event to make the public believe that Donald Trump is at risk of assassination. Yes, he's been at risk of assassination ever since he became president, and even before that. But when you look at the incident and when you look at all the dots joined together, you realize that this is nothing more than statecraft being implemented to sway public opinion into believing that this is an act either by a foreign power, and yes, it is an act by a foreign power, namely Mossad, okay, and the Zionist cabal, and in order to be able to bring public outrage to the fore for a specific outcome. And that outcome is to try to bring America's public perception into line with what the president believes, or what people who control the president believe should be done against Iran as a foreign power. It's going to fail miserably. Every single time they try it, it has failed miserably. And this is no exception. Where Iran actually stands right now, geopolitically, and in a position of unassailable geopolitical influence, is the fact that not only does Iran have people who are real negotiators, who understand the global implications of precisely what they are involved in, and who have planned for 40 years for this outcome, but they are also in a position to understand intimately the workings and the illogical nuances of their enemy, which is the United States of America and
Mhm.
Europe. They understand that properly. The United States and Europe, on the other hand, 95% of the people who are talking about attacking Iran have never visited the country. They don't even know
Mhm.
what it looks like. They look at pictures and then they
Mhm.
see what Google may put up there or some nonsense like that. They have never visited the country. They don't know that Iran is actually one of the most highly developed, intellectually competent countries in the world. They
It
gave us
is. It
algebra
is.
and mathematics. All America has done is give us chaos and hamburgers.
And they still are. They're not just historically so, they are still a very civilized and highly intelligent people. Somebody's
Yeah,
saying there is a report that Iran destroyed a radar system, and that since it did that, its drought has ended, and
disappeared.
yeah,
Absolutely true. That is
right.
true.
And Iran
That
is
is true
facing massive
because let me
raids.
yeah,
Mhm, go
let me
ahead.
explain why that happened. Let me explain why that happened. When the United States of America surrounded Iran with radar stations in the United Arab Emirates,
Hmm.
Qatar, Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, and so on, those radars had dual purpose uses: electromagnetic radiation to heat the atmosphere over Iran to create massive drought. It is happening right here in Barbados as we speak, because we have the ability right here in Barbados to do the exact same thing. We have electromagnetic generating station in Cotton Tower, St. John, that pulses and generates high energy electromagnetic waves into the sky. And then the government comes out and says, oh, Barbados is suffering from a hydrological drought. Absolute and utter nonsense. Why? Because the upper temperatures of the atmosphere haven't changed. If you
Yes.
have a hydrological drought, the temperatures in the atmosphere are much drier and hotter. That's not happening. This is localized electromagnetic frequency generation that is heating the surrounding atmosphere. Added to that, we have the overflight of commercial aircraft that are using chemtrails and nanoparticles of aluminium and barium salts that cause the reflection and the refraction of sunlight, okay? And that causes extra heating, okay? That's what's happening in Barbados. The same thing was happening in Iran. When Iran destroyed every single radar station in every single one of those countries, rainfall started again.
Wow. Wow.
Okay?
Wow.
Rainfall started again. The rivers began to fill up because you know had rainfall happening. In addition to that, snow was falling on some of the peaks of the Albarez Mountains even as late as mid-March.
Mm.
Why? Because you had removed the electromagnetic interference. I have friends of mine who live in the Albarez Mountains, close to the Caspian Sea, and they told me we have had one of the coolest March months where outside at night gets down to like 5 above zero. In
Right.
March, this is supposed
Wow.
to be springtime in the Albarez Mountains, okay?
Mm-hmm.
This is supposed to be springtime, 5 degrees above zero. This is in March. He said this is the first time this has happened in 10 years. Okay? So electromagnetic frequency generation causes atmospheric heating that can create drought conditions, which can then be influenced by differential pressure changes and so on to cause wind, high wind, and so on to create a drying effect. And then you have fires and all that sort of stuff going on. Some of the western provinces of the Karamshar province in Iran have been decimated by wildfires. Why? Because of excess heating and drying.
Is Iran, in your estimation, from your perspective, an enemy of the West, or is it a concocted enemy of the West? Are
It
they
is
playing with our minds too?
Yeah, it is definitely a concocted enemy of the West. When you have Benjamin Netanyahu spending 40 years of rhetoric demonizing Iran, from the time he was even before became prime minister, and then all through the last 30 years that he has been prime minister, okay, only goes to show you that the demonization of the West through media control and manipulation, or the demonizing of Iran through media control and manipulation, has paid massive dividends in the human perspective. Because if you repeat something often enough, everybody believes it.
Yes.
In addition to that, you
Correct.
also have the continual pointing to Iran whenever there's an incident that happens in the Middle East. If a shop gets blown up, or if there's an attack on a house somewhere, or if there's an airliner that goes down, everybody points to Iran. Oh, it's Hezbollah, or it's Iran, it's the IRGC, it's this terrorist state, it's this state sponsor of terrorism. So let's look at the facts. Let's just look at the facts for a second. Let's do a list. Number of countries invaded by the United States of America and ruined by Mossad and Israel State Intelligence since World War II, and then number of countries invaded by Iran and ruined by the IRGC and the Iranian government. On the Iranian side, there's a blank slate. On this side, no less than 25 countries have fallen victim to complete and total economic assassination and ruin. Completely ruined. Venezuela is one of them, right here in our backyard, and we have an ongoing situation in Haiti, and now Cuba is still under sanction threat. If the United States was supposedly the watchdog of democracy, why would sanctions be against Cuba for almost 70 years? Right.
And not only that, the fact that Trump is coming out. Mr. Corey.
Are sanctions supposed to be democratic? Since when?
They're not.
Since when has sanctions ever been democratic? In addition to that, when we look at official publications, such as the documentation from the Lancet Journal, which since 1971 to 2021, the United States of America and its international sanctions have been responsible for the deaths of 38 million people. Can you please tell me the correlation of sanctions to democracy? There is none.
None.
Okay?
There's
In
none.
addition to that, was Iran ever a coalition partner with the United States of America in implementing sanctions against another country? Nope. All the other countries that were part of the coalitions with the United States of America in implementing sanctions are all part of the same plan and are all hegemonic satraps of the United States empire. Where does Iran
Mm-hmm.
stand with that? Iran stands as a sovereign, independent nation that chose not to be encumbered with the nuances and the hegemonic influences of an evil empire that only knows chaos.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And only saying mainstream media won't highlight what the USA and UK did to Iran in 1953, brainwashing many to demonize Iran. Silence.
Yes, absolutely. In the overthrow of Mohammed Mossadegh, when he
Yes.
nationalized Iranian oil, the British Empire took great
Yes.
exception to that and said, you know what, we have to demonize this person, we have to demonize the country, label it as an outcast, and get rid of this individual. Followed by the Shah, who came in and introduced one of the most draconian management systems in the world. More Iranians died under the 23 years of the rule of the Shah than during at any
Yes.
period in modern history after
True.
World War One.
True.
This was one of
True.
the most
Mm-hmm.
oppressive, evil regimes ever implemented
Mm-hmm.
because it was the test case for the Zionist control
Yes.
cabal to utilize Iranians against themselves and create cliques of terrorist cells within the country. And utilizing Iran's diverse populations, the Baluchistans, the, the Yazidis, the Khorramshahr residents, the Kurds. Iran has multiple ethnicities within its country. It is also
Mm-hmm.
home, Iran is also home to the largest Jewish population outside of Israel.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. From the days of the Persian Empire, there were lots of Jews in
Of course.
Esther was one of them
Yeah.
in the book about the Persian Empire.
Why? 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 Because, again, we get back to the same point. Again, the Jewish faith is not one of violence. The Zionist ideology has utilized the Judaism diaphanous leaf to cloak itself with to create violence and then blame people for attacking Jews. That's where the whole ridiculous term of anti Semitism comes from, which is an inversion of the truth. You can't say that somebody's an
Mm-hmm.
anti Semite and attacking Jews because the word Semite
Yes.
has nothing to do with Jew. What is a Semite? A Semite is an Arab. So anti Arabism is used by the Zionist cabal in order to invert the meaning to attacking Jews, while they get away with all the
Correct.
nonsense on one side. Anti-Semitism actually means anti-Arabism. In other words, you are an anti-Arab. But who is the most anti-Arab
Yes.
society in the Western world? The Zionist cabal.
The
Israel
Zionists.
is
Because they want the
anti-Arabism.
Jews to die. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Exactly. And they have influenced the
Yeah.
world into believing that anti-Semitism is attacking Jews when they don't understand. They know the meaning of anti-Semite, but not the rest of the world. The rest of the world has been led to believe that anti-Semitism means that you're against Jews. No, it's not. Anti-Semitism means you're anti-Arab. But yet, we have no problem doing business with all the criminal elements in Dubai and UAE and Qatar and so on, who come from criminal families handed down through the generations and have been kept in control and homogenized by the United States empire. Because who controls the GCC countries? Israel.
Yes. Now look at what is happening at the Hilton, and we know that before, Europe was not so much on board with what Trump is. Well, that's what they say. Seems what happens, but Europe pretended as if they're not fully on board with Trump's policy on Iran. But since last night, now they're saying that they're against violence and the attack on Trump. So could this also be a way of enlisting the European nations on board with what Trump is doing in
No,
Iran?
no, no, no. I'll tell you the reason why. The NATO countries are the most hypocritical on the planet.
Mm-hmm.
Because here they're saying one side of their mouth that they're not supporting Trump and his war on Iran and so on and so forth, but yet
Correct.
they are in clear violation of the United Nations Article 3314 on the on
Ukraine.
aggression and international law by hosting U.S. forces within their countries on attacks against Iran. So the duplicity of the situation is absolutely horrendous. So on one hand, you have these stupid politicians saying, "Oh, we're not so going to support the US, and this is not all war, boy. It's all about it's all your problem." And then at the same time, they're saying, "Oh yeah, no problem. You can land over there, old boy. We'll just make sure the bombs come through the back door." Look, at the end of the day, it is nothing more than a criminal enterprise, and all of them are influenced by the same Zionist cabal. All, not one, all.
Yes, but what says that hypocrisy works? Hypocrisy in the Western culture. The fact of the matter is that here you have the countries in Western Europe who believe that perhaps their governments do not want to act as Trump is. Now that he has been attacked, they're not going to go back to the same public that they said that they would not be supporting Trump and his policies in Iran, and then change it and say we have to, because guess what? Maybe tomorrow that Iran will come to
No.
our parliaments and decide to attack us. So we have to unite with America against. So in that context, hypocrisy is effective. No, not that I agree with it, but it's effective in terms of doing what they wanted to do, though it was difficult for them to do it. What do
It
you
would
think?
only be effective to a very small minority of people who are brainwashed into believing that the mission against
Any-
Iran is something they should be part of. The general public and the armed forces in general, the man and the woman who are on the ground in the front and the face of the conflict, will have other opinions. And I am guaranteeing you that the NATO country, not only NATO has absolutely no military capacity to fight a war against Iran. In addition to that, Iran has absolutely no intention of attacking any one of the NATO countries unless they verifiably are being used in direct attacks against Iran's infrastructure. Now, those countries that are at risk are Turkey, because they host the Incirlik air base of the United States of America. Then another country that is at risk is Greece. Greece has capitulated to Israeli hegemony and is now allowing all of their air bases along the entire Greek establishment to be used by U.S. forces to launch attacks against Iran. And then on Crete, the island of Crete, which is Greece as well, they have the
Greece,
RAF Akrotiri, which is being used to host British fighter aircraft, as well as Israeli aircraft. And also Egypt. Now, Egypt has come off very lightly compared to other Gulf state countries because they're the furthest away. It's not that they're not within reach. Okay, Iran can easily target any airbase or any piece of infrastructure in Egypt. They have chosen not to, simply because Egypt has not been as involved as other closer countries. If you want to shut down every single thing that is going on with regard to air attacks against Iran, you take out all of the air bases in Italy, in Greece, and in Turkey, and see how the whole thing falters and collapses like a pack of cards. In addition to that, the Iranians have not started to interdict the air bridge between Saudi Arabia and Europe. If the Iranians decided that they were going to use their S-400 missile systems to interdict the air bridge, which is air transport aircraft that are coming in from Europe and landing in Saudi Arabia and reinforcing supplies there, everything would come to a halt in 24 hours, because it would only take for the United States of America to lose 5 or 6 transport aircraft with all of the equipment on board being shot down, and the whole thing would collapse. Okay?
Wow.
Iran has not yet touched the logistics chain. How do you starve an enemy for operation? Hit the logistics chain. This was what secured Allied victory going up the Italian peninsula in 1944. In 1943, on the landings in North Africa, and then across the Western Desert, and then into Italy, the Allies won the war up the Italian peninsula because they consistently struck the logistics chain that were supplying the Italians and the German military inside Eastern Europe. All the train lines, all the airfields, anything that was moving on the ground was fair game. Iran has not yet decided to interdict the logistics chain coming from Europe into the Middle East. And the minute that you interdict that logistics chain and you set a boundary and a no-fly zone, that's when the whole thing will collapse. And it's very easy to do that because the S-400 system can be set up on the Iranian-Syrian border and cover airspace all the way to southern Italy.
Yeah.
Any aircraft flying within
Yes.
that vicinity can and will be shot down. And make that very, very clear to the international community. We are protecting Iran. We are going to interdict the logistics chain. It only takes for the Iranians to put 2 S-400 missile batteries on Karg Island, not only to protect Karg Island, but they can project the 400-kilometer detection range far into Saudi Arabia. Anything that moves in Saudi Arabia inside of that window will be shot down. In addition, you can take 2 S-400 batteries and set them up in Yemen and take out anything over Eastern Africa all the way to the Egyptian border. So which way you want to play this, guys? Look, at the end of the
I
day, the situation
think.
can be
Go
handled.
ahead, Mr.
The situation can
Yes.
be handled.
It can be handled, but they don't want to handle it. They don't want to handle it, Mr. Corbett, that they don't want to handle. It's profitable. It's business.
Yeah.
But what I want to say, though, and I'm going to say it very, very frankly, is that I think, and I believe, when I saw one data about killing the Iranians and all of that stuff, I said in my mind, not on the show, that we're going to have a number of false flag events in the United States, in Europe, and perhaps in Israel. I think this is the beginning of lots of events launched on different spots of the world, and they're going to blame it on the so-called enemy. What do you think?
Yes, well, that has always been the modus operandi. Their agenda is to create a number of false flag events that build a narrative over time. Remember, the lead up to the Gulf War in 1991 took a year. Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait in 1990. It was only in January of 1991, okay, that action was actually taken. Long before Saddam
Yes.
Hussein actually moved across the border from Iraq into Kuwait, which was part of his ancestral territory anyway, because Kuwait was only subdivided from Iraq by the British after the end of the First World War. The most important thing to remember here is that leading up to Saddam Hussein's invasion, the rhetoric had already started. In January of 1990, President Bush already was starting the rhetoric. The United States military was gearing for an operation against Iraq. And Iraq was having just lost the war to Iran, okay, in 1989. For 1980 to 1989, having been beaten roundly by Iran, wanted to be used by the United States of America, and the United States of America wanted to punish Iraq for failing to kill Iran. And they set the whole Iraq war in 1991 in motion. And that rhetoric started in 1990, all the way up to 1 year later in 1991 when Iraq was taken out. Okay, and then further destabilized until the invasion in 2003. At the end of the day, the situation is the same. You're seeing the same thing. The attempts against Iran, 30 years of rhetoric, demonizing the country, slowly destabilizing everything around it, and so on, then leading to a color revolution which failed miserably, and then a direct attack to take out its leadership against its military leadership. That also failed, and then a completely unprovoked attack during negotiations that led to a 39-day constant fire situation. Has that worked? Nope. Why? Because Iran understands the diversity and the mosaic infrastructure that is required for the distribution of authority. And the distribution of authority with regard to its running of its daily affairs as well as its domestic affairs leads the government into a situation where it can manage the country effectively despite suffering losses of crucial individuals, because there's always 5 individuals for every one. That mosaic of 31 command and control structures takes Iran to the next level of being able to be self-sufficient and be able to survive the decentralization, because they saw what happened to Saddam Hussein, they saw what happened to Libya, they saw what happened in Albania, in Algeria, they saw what happened in Tunisia, and they realized, you know what, if we don't decentralize our systems of government, our constitutional and our jurisprudence, we are going to suffer the same fate. And very, very quickly, because modern weaponry continued to advance in technological prowess. The West had no idea that while they were building what they thought were the best Western systems, Iran was actually leapfrogging them in leaps and bounds by being able to operate underground, out of sight, with access to the best technological innovation, where it leads us to today, where they're an unassailable position. They are in the driving seat. Not only do they control the geography of their country, which is absolutely crucial, but they control the governance and jurisprudence of their society. What causes failure in any country more quickly than anything is when you lose control of your jurisprudence and your command and control structure.
Now, do you think, we're heading down, counting down rather, do you think we are really paying close attention? Let me just give you a practical example. We got the impression that the United States is against, China saying that one is the enemy, the other one is saying that they are us first, and they were back and forth. Are we seeing a similar pattern between Iran and the United States and whatever so-called enemies, that we are paying so much attention to what they're saying and who is the enemy, that we are not focusing on what the agenda is? Because at the end of the day, both countries, China and the United States, did the same thing, right? Are we paying too much attention, chatting about what Iran and what missiles they have and whatever, rather than looking at the fact that they are re-engineering a global system which we have got to deal with, and perhaps not so much them, but us?
Well, I agree with you 100%. The entire global balance of power having shifted to the east financially has warranted for them to destroy what they have and demonize somebody else for it. So Iran can be held as the scapegoat of destroying the Western financial system and destroying the Western economy by not complying to the ridiculous demands of a demented orange baboon in the White House.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's one theory.
Mm-hmm.
The second theory is that this has been planned for a very long period of time to use Iran as a tool to destroy the Middle East, blame the crash of the economy on Iran, allow Israel to gain complete hegemonic empire over the Middle East, and then introduce Agenda 2030 2.0 with regard to control, absolute control of hegemonic power in finance, resources, and complete dystopian control of the humanity.
Mm-hmm.
And in addition to that, you then have the addition of incoming weather warfare, which we know to be being prepared at this point in time. The United States of America, in its geoengineering exercises and its geoengineering hegemony, is preparing probably one of the worst cases of El Nino that the world will ever see. That is currently happening. If you look at current weather patterns off the west coast of the United States of America, it is building. They are constructing it. And we will see devastating weather events happening across the United States of America, which will have devastating effects into smaller regions of the world, such as the Caribbean. And then we will also experience devastating weather events as a result of it. All geoengineered, in order to be able to create mass confusion and depopulation events, which can be controlled by the three-letter agencies: World Health Organization, United Nations, World Food Program. All the rest of these people all of a sudden start popping up and say, oh, you can't do this and you can't do that. In addition, with the crash of the global economy due to the demonization of Iran, we will then enter what is known as the conservation lockdowns. In other words, you have to stay at home and stay in your home because there's not enough fuel for everybody to drive to work.
You're telling us it already.
It's happening already. It's already happening. Australia has now put measures in place where people are being asked to drive to work one day a week and stay home the rest.
Yeah.
And don't go any further than a certain distance from your home because we don't have enough fuel to service anybody. Look, it is so ridiculous. It is unreal. So let me ask the logical question then. If you would put all of these measures in place for Australia, where you're restricting people to their home because you're saying they don't have enough fuel, why did you go to Malaysia and do a fire sale deal with Petronas Petroleum in Malaysia for the supply of 500 million cubic feet of natural gas and over 300 billion barrels of oil over the next 7 years?
Yes.
What's that all about?
Yeah, good question. Good question. How are we now in the Caribbean, with what we're seeing transpiring around the world, with what happened at the Washington Hilton? What implication does that have for our prime ministers or leaders or politicians in the region?
Well, we have to understand what is happening in the Caribbean region. And this goes back to 2020 with the suspension of global constitutions due to 196
Yeah.
countries who had signed the World Health Organization health policy.
Hmm.
On the 5th of February 2020, the suspension of the Constitution of Barbados took place. Other countries followed suit when they introduced the World Health Organization mandates of lockdowns and restrictions and so on and so forth. Constitutions of 196 countries were suspended.
Yes.
In the case of Barbados, we are still operating under a suspended constitution. There is no constitution in this country. There is no constitution in any CARICOM territory. Hence why you see the ability of the Prime Minister of Barbados to act in the way that she has, where she has utilized the European Union and allying groups of Caribbean countries allied to European Union governance structures to create a coalition or coalescing of all the labor governments in the Caribbean.
Mm.
If you look at all of the labor governments in Caribbean, they all say the same thing. They all wear red. They all have the exact same outlook, and most of them have already signed on to the European Union PACE program.
Mm-hmm. Jamaica wears green though. Jamaica Labour Party is green. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, at the end of the day, Jamaica is not. It cannot be influenced by Barbados because it's the U.S. hegemony. It's a Zionist hegemony now.
Right.
Okay. Trinidad, same thing. Guyana, same thing. You can't influence these three countries anymore simply because they're all U.S. hegemony construct. They're satraps of the United States hegemony, and you will not influence them in any other direction other than that for the incoming future. However, the small islands in between are fair game for coalescing of power and to influence a hegemonic influence within CARICOM. Now look at CARICOM. Who are the ones that are on the outside in CARICOM? Trinidad, Jamaica, and Guyana. Everything else that's going on in CARICOM is all under the Barbados Prime Minister and this person and that person. And the thing is, the Barbados Prime Minister holds more power in CARICOM than any other individual. Not even the Secretariat of CARICOM holds more power than her, because the Secretariat of CARICOM follows her instructions. We wouldn't be having this conversation if that were not true. Because if it was not true, what would have happened? What happened in Barbados, where a Trinidadian citizen was arrested by CARICOM nationals at the behest of the Prime Minister of Barbados, would never have happened. Okay? So nobody can come and tell me or any other intelligent individual on this planet that the Barbados Prime Minister does not control CARICOM. She may not be the General Secretary, but she controls CARICOM. Okay? And anybody who has any other illusions other than that is delusional. Because the evidence speaks clearly for itself, and that is what has caused the rift between Trinidad and CARICOM. And I agree completely with the Prime Minister of Trinidad. I am not saying that the Prime Minister of Trinidad is doing everything that should be done in the best interest of the Caribbean, but she's doing everything in the best interest of Trinidad being absolved of any involvement in criminal activity that was perpetuated by orders given under the Prime Minister of Barbados to CARICOM. And this is an extremely serious matter, because what's happened now is that the Prime Ministers under the Labour coalition governments that have been put in place have now come together as a cabal, a CARICOM cabal, where the CARICOM is being used as a means for them to make money. They can extort this, they can extort that. You do this, we do this. Or if we can't get that, we're going to do this to you. This is what is happening in the Caribbean region. It's an extremely dangerous situation that is developing. But where has it come from? The origins come from the United States of America, because that's how we've seen America operate throughout the last 50 to 60 years. We wouldn't be having this conversation if that were not true. And one of the clearest examples of that is the operations of the Central Intelligence Agency in the Caribbean for many, many years. And the most overt act of all that proved that a U.S. hegemony could influence Caribbean geopolitics was the assassination of 73 Cuban nationals in 1976, when the Cubana flight was blown up right off the coast here in Barbados.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah,
we have a lot of
and they
history.
Protected that.
Yes, we have a lot of history here in the Caribbean that points to the United States meddling in the affairs of the Caribbean region. Norman Manley was a classic example of this, first-hand knowledge of exactly how the CIA influenced Jamaica. and the rest of the region. And we saw how the CIA fomented the
Yeah.
entire debacle
Mm.
against Morris Bishop in Grenada and took out one of the
Yes,
Caribbean's
Grenada.
visionaries, removed a visionary
Hmm.
of Caribbean geopolitics.
Yes, yes, yes. Now, how much does Barbados contribute to CARICOM? Isn't it less than that contributes?
Andrew, let me put it in the simplest possible terms. If you take an empty oil drum and put two rocks in it and roll it down a hill, do you think it's going to keep more noise than a full one? There
I
you
like
go.
what you say. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Right.
yeah. But I must
Barbados
say
is
though that Myanmar is very.
Barbados is all rhetoric, all mouth, and all behind the scenes about control. Okay? When it comes to contributing to CARICOM, Trinidad holds the lion's share along with Jamaica. Jamaica
Hmm.
and Trinidad are the ones that contribute the most to CARICOM. There, as I said in our last podcast, the small islands of the Caribbean states survive on the products that come out of Jamaica and come out of Trinidad.
See that? Yeah. Hmm. 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 Now, so where do you think we're going from here? Because I don't think that we are going to be going have to tread through some very dark waters right now with what is happening in the world globally. I think our citizens are also distracted. Have one guy I speed in the Caribbean and everybody is watching him now and his shenanigans. And we're not really looking at what the real substantive things that are happening in the world by extension. So what is going to happen in the region? Because I think that we're lost, I should say.
Well, I will never say that the Caribbean region is lost because I'm
Yeah.
eternally optimistic and I have the utmost confidence in the intellect and the moral capacity of our people. And that has
Right.
always been my opinion. That has always been my
Hmm.
belief. And I believe in my Caribbean
Yes.
people. I believe in the fact that we, as a coalesced and unified region, can be the fifth largest, most prosperous economic environment
Region.
in the Western Caribbean, in the Western
Hmm.
region. And I
Hmm.
firmly believe that if we utilize our spiritual collective consciousness, we can make a massive difference with regard to geopolitical positioning on the global stage.
Hmm.
Whether we are
Yes.
willing, politically willing, as well as physically willing of each person to look at the situation in that objective sense remains to be seen. Many people become very
Yes.
despondent because things are not happening the way they should. Oh, the government ain't giving me nothing. I ain't getting nothing from the government. And I can't do this and I can't do that. Well, you know what? Get up off your backside and look for something else to do properly. Okay? It's
Hmm.
just that simple.
Hmm.
If the bananas are not growing, then find something else to plant. Okay? You know,
Hmm.
the old Caribbean saying, if you don't have horse, ride cow. Look, we're not
Hmm.
here to try to namby-pamby anybody
Right.
or to say, oh, we're going to do this for you or we can do that for you. No, we have to come together based on the practicality of our circumstances. And our
Hmm.
practical circumstances right now is that we're being backed into a corner. We're being held once again under colonial hegemony. And that has to be faced down for what it is. We have to stand up
Hmm.
and come to the collective consciousness that we have as righteously minded, intellectually imbued individuals and stand united as Caribbean people within our righteous consciousness and say, listen, that is not going to happen here. Okay? It's not going to happen here. We may not be able to fight you militarily, but we are not going to allow certain policies to destroy our societies. We are going to fight that, and we are not going to comply. Mass non-compliance is the most effective means of strategic geopolitical change in small island states, and none more so than the
Hmm.
example that was handed to us by Mahatma Gandhi. Yes, India
Hmm.
was not
Hmm.
a small island developing state, but you know what? The environment in which he was operating was considered an enclave at that time, where he could influence 1 million Indians to sit on the banks of the Ganges and don't move for 3 days. Okay? Understand one thing very clearly. Mass non-compliance and peaceful protest carries more weight than you going out there and running around like a headless chicken and trying to say that you're going to conquer the world. We have to come
Correct.
together on a spiritual collective consciousness and say, listen, we are not going to comply. We value our people. We value our children. We value our heritage, no matter how checkered it's past. We value what we have to be able to offer to the world. And we know that as a prosperous region, we can stand unified and in power, empowered by God and by the Holy Spirit, and bringing us into the presence of being able to empower those around us.
Mm-hmm.
Failure to do that
Yeah.
will result in the exact
Yeah.
same situation that we see happening in other countries who refuse to say, we can do this. You know what?
Yes.
We can do this.
Mm-hmm. 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 But or people believe in the leaders that that when you are talking, they are thinking that they're waiting their leaders to resolve whatever problem that they're in. Is a problem that we face in the region.
Well, the thing
Is
is, you have to,
belief
you have
in,
to,
in
you have
leaders.
to, we have to define leadership. I want any one of the audience listening to us this afternoon to define any one of the Caribbean people in government in this Caribbean region today that exemplifies leadership. Show me one. We have no leadership in the Caribbean because we have no unity, and we don't have unity because we have
And vision. Mm-hmm.
we have been paying allegiance to the hegemony of the Caribbean that has been put in place, or the hegemony of the United States of America that has been kept in place by the petrodollar. Everybody believes that the US is the ultimate goal of achievement. Okay? There is no leadership. All you have is acquiescence. You have paying of allegiance. Okay? You have yes, sir, and yes, ma'am. Okay? Well, let me just put it very, very simply for you. Do you know what the word sir means? And we've had this conversation. The word sir,
Mm-hmm.
when
Mm-hmm.
you say sir, is not a mark of respect of our or of authority. The word sir means servant I remain. And it was put in place
Mm-hmm.
deliberately by the colonial imperial powers that even when you achieve the highest status of community integrity, you are still a servant to the colonial empire. Well, you know what? The word sir is no longer a part of my vocabulary. I'm going to call you
Mm-hmm.
brother or sister. Okay? Because you know what? The only person that I serve is our Heavenly Father God. I have no
Yeah.
obligation to serve anyone else. So don't come to me and tell me yes, sir, or no, sir. Tell me yes, brother,
Mm-hmm.
or no, brother. All right? And I want that
Mm-hmm.
message to be
Mm-hmm.
very clearly resonated to all of our audience. Servant I remain must be removed from our authority in regard to how we address people. No,
Mm-hmm.
sir, no, brother, or yes, brother,
Yeah.
because we're all brothers and
Yeah.
sisters, regardless of our circumstances and where we've come from.
Right. That I think that we have done a very interesting live, and I would encourage all of you to like it and to share it and to make sure that the algorithm in sending it all over to other people, so that they can learn from whatever we have discussed. Thank you so much, Mr. Corbin, for joining us another live, and we hope that we'll have another one soon so that we can continue to educate our Caribbean citizens and help them to understand that we're living in some very, as the songwriter in Jamaica said, that time so serious, cantankerous, and
Yeah,
dangerous.
yeah.
And right now, what we're seeing, for your final thoughts, Mr. Corbin.
Well, again, as I said, I believe in my Caribbean people, and I will encourage everyone listening to the live this afternoon to think on the things that have been discussed. We can do this. We have the power.
Yes.
We have the power to stand on a unified position for a prosperous Caribbean region going forward for the next 500 years. Not only do we have the resources under our feet and energy, we have tremendous access to intellectual ability across the region. We don't need expensive consultants, and we need to stand together, create our own unified financial system based on gold-backed commodity, explore our energy options that are sitting under our feet, and bring the Caribbean region to a new level of prosperity and future vision.
Thank you so
Have a great evening.
much. Well said. Yes, thank you so much. All the best. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. I'll see you another